Terry Fallis is a two-time winner of the Stephen Leacock Medal for Humor and CBC Canada Reads winner. He's the author of 8 national bestsellers and 5 number 1 bestsellers. He's a great Canadian author and much loved by many. Now, Terry is with us today to talk about his new book. It's called A New Season, and I was delighted to receive an advanced reading copy so that I could prepare for today's conversation. And I can tell you, it's a book with real heart and a cast of characters that any one of us would love to know. Terry, thanks for joining us today. It's just a delight to talk to you again.
Oh, Mike, it's great to be with you again after a few years, but thank you for having me. I'm grateful.
You're more than welcome. And of course, you're so well known for your humorous writing, and this book, while it has a lovely thread of gentle humor right throughout it, this is a very sensitive look at love, loss, and hope renewed. And I wonder, how did this Jack McMaster come to mind for this story?
Well, Mike, it's a great question. I've been trying to figure it out myself because it is a bit of a departure from my other novels, but I wrote this story in the middle of the pandemic, and while I think we could all use some humor after what we've endured for the last 3.5 years, it just sort of seems I couldn't avoid writing about loss and grief and recovery and I guess love too. In a way, I think I wrote the novel to exercise the feelings of loss and fear and isolation that the pandemic imposed on most, if not all of us. And, in hindsight, it occurred to me, thinking back on it, that in almost all of my novels, there is some loss or grief or sadness. They're in there in the stories, but they are more than outweighed by the humor. But in this novel, I think the scales of sadness and humor are a little more evenly balanced. So I did what I haven't really done before. I just followed the story that emerged from my brain pan, and I wasn't constantly thinking about how I could make it funny. I think of it more as I was respecting the story that seemed to emerge, and I just let it unfold, which was a bit of a different experience for me as a writer.
As I said at the outset, it's a lovely story and a great cast of characters. Maybe you could give folks just a tiny thumbnail without giving away too much.
And I'll try. Stop me if I go too far. Because the book's so new, I'm still learning about how to describe it. But the novel is narrated by a man named Jack McMaster, and he's a 62-year-old freelance writer living in the community of Riverdale here in Toronto. And his wife of more than 30 years died suddenly 2.5 years before the novel opens, as one of Toronto's first COVID victims. And Annie, his wife, was a high-flying mergers and acquisitions lawyer at a big Toronto firm. And one day early in the spring of 2020, she's driving home from the office and recognized the symptoms that she was feeling, and sensing what it was, because it was just in the news recently. She drove directly to the hospital, and Jack and their son, Will, were never to be in the same room with her again, which is what many families experienced in the early days of this pandemic. So Jack is learning to navigate life without his best friend and his partner in life, and he's really not managing it particularly well. So he's well supported, as you know, if you've read the novel, by his friends in his local seniors men's ball hockey league. But guys don't always know how friendship really works. I don't think we're as good as at friendship as women are. So the novel does explore male friendship a little bit. It also examines aging. In all 8 of my previous novels, I have never written a narrator who is my own age. they've all been younger. And that may tell you something about how old I feel or how old I think I am inside. So I wanted to dig into that aging question and how people, particularly men in this case, come to grips with waking up one morning and really realizing all of a sudden that we're in our 60s. Just to round it out, there's also other themes examined, including Paris, the city of Paris, a place that Jack has always wanted to visit. And he has a fascination with Paris in the 1920s. At the time when there are these seismic effects that the expat writers and artists of that era had on the cultural landscape of the time, just as Europe was emerging from the horrors of the Great War. And finally, there's also a look at songwriting in the novel. I know those seem like very strange, disconnected themes to bring together in a novel, and I'm sure the readers will judge whether I've been able to string them together in a way that at least approaches coherence. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the story, that's for sure.
That's for sure. And from my point of view, all the pieces fit together very, very nicely because the narrative it takes them and moves the story forward at each juncture. But I must admit, I was a little taken aback by ball hockey. Usually in a Canadian novel, you expect hockey for sure, maybe football or baseball, but ball hockey came from a little bit left field. And of course, Jack McMaster has a bunch of really good friends in the team there, as you say, who are there to be supportive to him. How did ball hockey get into the novel?
Well, it is kind of a Canadian rite of passage growing up playing road hockey on the street with a tennis ball that really stings when it hits you. But I can certainly say that, while this novel is not autobiographical, and I'll probably say that more than once because there are quite a few connections to my own life in this story, but that doesn't mean it's autobiographical, Mike. I'm not writing about me in these stories, but I just find it easier to write with authority and conviction and authenticity if I'm writing about worlds that I know and experiences that I have had or issues that I care about. And that is reflected in this novel as it is in all of my others. But the ball hockey in particular, I've played ball hockey in a community senior men's league here in Toronto, in the community of Riverdale, in the very park where this novel is set, at least for some scenes, since I was 43 years old, which is 20 years ago now.
Wow.
And I think it's quite rare at the age of 43 and that's, how old I was when I started, to all of a sudden acquire a whole new set of very strong friendships courtesy of this ball hockey league. I mean, we're not great at making friends in general, I think, as men. But at that late stage, relatively late stage in life to be making new friends, I am now surrounded by a group of guys I see every Tuesday night when I play ball hockey. I help run the league now. I'm one of the captains, as is my identical twin brother, Tim. We play in the same league, on the same team, usually on the same line. And just the time spent with those guys they come from all walks of life, as is reflected in the story. There are lawyers and high-flying business people. There are guys who work for the city. There are writers and artists and people who work at media outlet. I mean, it's the most interesting and diverse group I've ever met. And we've just been together for a long time now. And it helped me examine my own approach to friendship and how I feel about the other men in my life. And I thought I wanted to explore that in a novel, and the Ball Hockey League seemed like the obvious way to do it in the novel.
Well, it's a lovely piece, and I knew it wasn't autobiographical because Jack McMaster is taller than you are.
There you go. That's right. Another aspirational part of the story.
Another touch point in the book, and again, it was another surprise for me. Jack and Will had a connection to Jim Cuddy. and that one really set me back. So tell me about this rather unique connection to Jim Cuddy.
You're right, Mike. Other than the famous artists like Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald and Gertrude Stein and Morley Callahan, who make sort of appearances in the novel, at least they're referenced in the novel, the only real character in the story is Jim Cuddy, famed singer-songwriter with Blue Rodeo. And that's because I know Jim. We played on the same team and sometimes on the same line in that same ball hockey league. And just he is such a lovely guy. Beyond being one of the most talented musicians, singer-songwriters we have in the country and may ever have, he is a lovely guy. So I think I wrote that in the acknowledgments when I thanked him, that while the story is fictitious, it's fiction, it's a novel, the Jim Cuddy in the story is the real Jim Cuddy. And it was very good of him to allow me to do that. I reached out because it would have been very easy, Mike, for me to just insert a name of somebody else, a fictional name, and let it go at that. But Jim was who I was thinking of when I was writing the story. So I just emailed him, and I sent him the manuscript, and he said, I don't even need to read this, Terry. I have
Nice.
Trust that you are gonna capture me the way I am, so go ahead and do it. And that was brave, but also very generous and kind of him, which is completely consistent with who he
Well,
is.
it's a lovely part of the book, and Jim appears a few times through the book, and you feel a real connection. Having interviewed Jim in the past, I know what you mean. As just one of the nicest people you could wish to meet, a great Canadian musician and songwriter. And there are two original songs in the story. They're love ballads about love and friendship, and one is called Until the New Year, and the other one is More Than the Game, which has to do with ball hockey. And these are real songs.
They are. I wrote More Than the Game about 15 years ago, as I was sort of really getting into the league and realizing, wow, what an extraordinary group of guys this is. We support one another. It reaches beyond the ball hockey rink. When someone was sick, that there's a part in the story that is sort of captured by this, which I'll not go into. But when someone is going through some health struggles, the guys in the league swing into action, and we did a GoFundMe campaign. We had a meal schedule. We were taking food over to the house, and so that's why it's called More Than the Game. Yes, we're competitive. We love to play ball hockey, but the league is so much more of a community than it is just 6 teams playing ball hockey on a Tuesday night. So that song, More Than the Game, tried to capture that. I do think of it as a love song in a way, a love song for the league. And the other song, Until the New Year, I wrote 43 years ago, Mike. I was in university. I just started dating a young woman, and we were just in that early flush of getting to know one another, and I fell head over heels. And she went home to Nova Scotia for the Christmas holidays, and I was left on campus by myself with a late exam, and I was missing her, and I wrote that song. And she is still with me today. I'm married to that woman now, 43 years later.
That's amazing. Now, both of these songs will play a part in your audiobook, I understand.
That's right, and that's something McClellan and Stewart has never done before. We're not even sure it's happened anywhere else before, but yeah. So when the song comes up, or whichever song I'm talking about, when it comes up, and he's sort of playing it for his son in the kitchen or something, that's how you hear it. It's just a single voice and a guitar. It's not more fully produced than that, because that's not how it happens in the novel. So it was interesting to do that, and I have been a very closeted singer-songwriter since I was 17, never laboring under the delusion that I had the guitar skills or the singing skills for it to be anything other than a private joy for me, just a good friend for me. I mean, if I turn the camera around, you'd see two guitars sitting in the corner right here, a 12 string and a 6 string. And it's just been a part of my life, but it's been a private part of my life. I did play in a band in university, and that was some of the most fun I've ever had. But that song, Until the New Year, that I wrote for my now wife 43 years ago, probably has only been heard by a couple of dozen people in all that time, and now it's going to be on the audiobook. So it's a little terrifying to consider that, but we thought it would add something different, and because the songs were real, why not give them a listen to it? But
Marvelous idea.
I'm no singer, but I hope it comes across okay.
I'll look forward to hearing that for sure. Now, Paris plays a significant part in the novel, and Jack, he travels to Paris, which is a place he and his wife always said they were going to go to, but for certain reasons we find out in the book that never happened. And he stays there for a number of months, and the left bank is a big part of the book. I didn't go to Google Maps, but I was very close to doing that, because we take quite the tour of the left bank. And I wonder, is Paris a favorite haunt of yours, or how does this play into the novel?
Yeah, Paris is a very special city for me and for my wife. We visit it every couple of years, whether we need to or not, and we usually need to. And it's just a fun thing to look forward to. And the left bank is of particular interest to me, as it is to Jack McMaster in the novel, because that's really where writers like Hemingway and Fitzgerald and Morley Callahan and so many others really reshaped literature in the early part of the last century. And I've just been fascinated by that period and that place ever since. So yeah, Paris does play an important part kind of in my own life personally. And no research was required for those aspects of the novel. That was just me writing about places I like to visit when I'm in Paris.
Jack runs into Elizabeth Callahan Hughes, who sounds like just the most delightful person. And the story picks up in their relationship. But she also has a grandmama, Constance Stanley. And she's very important to the story, because her diaries become part of the story. And I wonder, is there any truth to Constance Stanley and everything that she wrote?
I wish there were, Mike, but I invented the Constance Stanley character to give me a way to kind of examine some of the writers of that era and the experiences that those artists and writers had in the 1920s in Paris. So I use her diaries, and they aren't, I think there are only three or maybe three diary entries of hers that we get to look at in the novel. But she's a fascinating person. I really enjoyed writing her and trying to capture the style of writing that a young British woman might have used recording her daily life in 1920s Paris. And she ended up befriending some of the heavyweights of that era, and she chases down Ezra Pound, the great poet. She has an encounter with Elizabeth Hadley Richardson, who was the wife of Ernest Hemingway. And in fact, the name of Elizabeth Callahan Hughes in the novel was really supplied by her grandmother, Constance Stanley, who suggested the name. And Callahan is named after Morley Callahan because Constance befriended Morley Callahan and his wife Loretto when they spent the summer of 1929 in Paris. So there is some history and some truth weaving its way through this fiction and the story. But I really did. I'm glad you said you liked the Elizabeth Callahan Hughes, known as Callahan in the novel. I just wanted to create a really free-spirited, interesting artist woman who is clearly her grandmother's granddaughter. And I had a lot of fun with the Callahan character.
Well, I can tell you, when the book came to a close, I was really sorry that it ended. And for me, that's a sign of a really great read. And as I say, these characters, Jack and Will and Callahan, I just wanted to know more about their lives. They were such a great group, and I think that's the reaction you're going to get, Terry. I think this is not only a great novel with some surprising elements to it, that lovely thread of humor as Jack takes stock of growing older. I think we got up to, was it 10 or 11 or 12 points of growing older that he noted?
Something like that. I think
something of that order.
Yeah.
And certainly any chap reading them can relate to those stages. Now, the new season goes on sale August 29. And I'm assuming that people can pre-order the book?
They can pre-order right now if they wish. And then the book ought to arrive on publication day, August 29th, or the next day. So yes, you can certainly you can order it through your independent bookstore. You can order it at chapters.indigo.ca or at amazon.ca. They're all set up. Or if you're an electronic book reader or Audible, the audiobook, you can pre-order them as well.
Now, the audiobook, I just want to touch on that for a second. This is not something that you do by just sitting down and reading the book into a microphone. This is a rather time-consuming and a real effort to get the right audiobook prepared. Maybe you could give an insight to what it takes to produce an audiobook.
Sure, Mike. This is the third time I've done the official audiobook for Penguin Random House, McClellan and Stewart. I actually kept the audio rights for my first 6 novels, and I podcast them myself, producing them in this very room. And I would just make them available for free on iTunes or the other podcasting directories out there, just as a way of thanking people. But when Penguin Random House actually started their own audio division, I finally decided I should just have it professionally done. But they still wanted me to do the reading, which was very nice, because I do think there is an advantage to having the writer record the audiobook, because they know the mood they're trying to set. They know the inflection to use on a certain sentence to make sure that the meaning is clearer. And you sometimes aren't certain that the actor who would normally be doing it is going to have the same insight or be close enough to the story to recognize the subtleties and the nuances that an audiobook requires. So I was very happy to do it. It is kind of, it's taxing, because you go in and I had 3-hour recording sessions, and we would usually cover, 50 to 75 pages in a session, and you can really feel it in your voice afterwards. And I had a wonderful director, Susan Roman, and a great audio engineer, Chris Weens, and Susan was terrific. Because sometimes I would not know exactly what I meant in this sentence, having written it, a year and a half ago. And she would say, "Well, was it this?" And she'd probe me, and then I would pick the one that made sense and perform it the way she had taught me to. So she was great at helping me. I think get to the truth in the book that sometimes I wasn't always aware of.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now you do. About 100, I think you have said in one of your writings, about 100 appearances a year. Like a number of other authors, you're very, very busy. You're sought after for readings and book clubs and special events. And I know your schedule is booked right into January of next year. And I think you just recently mentioned that you're also going out west. Is this the new normal for writers to put in this kind of effort?
Mike, for better or worse, I think it is the new normal. It has been that way for my entire life as a published author, which is now 15 years or more. I mean, gone are the halcyon days when there was no competition for the book beyond the radio and black and white television. Yeah. Now publishers are very squeezed financially, and the big budget national marketing book tour, I missed that completely. So I've never had a national book tour. I do little regional swings now and then. I am going out west in the fall to some festivals and to do some other events. But those days are gone. And now the writer really has the burden and the benefit, I think, of going out and doing much of the book promotion themselves. It is kind of the new normal. And I think writers have done what they've always done over the years. They have adapted to the new conditions in the marketplace, and we respond. And some writers are writers because they don't like to go out and be in the public and talk about their books. I feel blessed because I actually enjoy all aspects of the writing life. The cooking up the story, the being locked away in this room, isolated and working on the novel. I like that part. Writing the manuscript, I love that. But I also like being released when that's done and going out and meeting with the Lions Club in Oshawa and writers festivals in different parts of the country where I can meet other writers and readers. And I know from firsthand experience that it's part of what keeps your book above the waves of obscurity that have submerged so many other novels. Like, you really have to get out there and talk about it and promote it. And I think that's just, again, for better or worse, because lots of writers, I think, feel it is a bit of an imposition, and I understand that. So it is hard work, but when you love doing it, it doesn't feel like work. I know it is work, but it doesn't feel like it to me. So I feel very blessed that I happen to be built that way. Yeah,
that's exactly the best kind of work. Now, people can sign up for your blog, and it's called a Novel Journey. And we should mention to people that you can find that through your website, terryfallis.ca. And
actually.
And you say in your July 9th article that promoting yourself and your books is all about this adapting and being serious about promoting yourselves. You've just said how much you enjoy that. Do you think that's the case for most writers today across Canada?
I think some writers happen to be built that way, but I suspect that many of them are not. I know many of them are not, as I know some of them, and public speaking is one of our primal fears as human beings. So not everyone is able or at ease with the idea of stepping in front of a crowd. And if you're at a book club, it may only be 8 or 9 people, but if you're at a big festival, it could be 300 or 400 people. Or going on television to talk about your book. It's something that that I think for some writers gets in the way of their writing process, and it's becomes a distraction, a diversion, and it takes them away from that which they really love doing, which is the writing part. I just feel very lucky that I happen to enjoy all aspects of it, which makes me lament that I didn't write my first novel till I was 45. Maybe I could have been doing this earlier in my life, but so I'm happy with the promotion that is required. It's how you sell enough books to get the privilege of writing another one.
Well, someone who follows your blog on a regular basis, first of all, I really enjoy what you put in there. It's very different because it's very to the point. It has you as a human being in what you write, but you also help us as readers kind of understand the process and understand what's happening with your books and your trips out. Yeah, it's a lovely way of staying in touch with someone, and I hardly recommend to our viewers and listeners that you go to Terry's website and then sign up for a novel journey. I can guarantee that you'll enjoy it. And,
That's
Terry,
great, Mike. I appreciate that. I mean, you just have to, on the homepage, just scroll down to the bottom, and there will be a little box where you can just plug in your email address, and every other Sunday they'll get an email from me with all
that's right.
the newsletter. So thank
Something
you.
to look
Thanks for the plug.
something to look forward to for the Monday morning.
There you go.
Terry, thanks for joining us today and sharing your thoughts. And very excited for you with the new book. Good luck to you. August 29th will be an exciting day for you. A new season is available now for pre-orders, and we hope everybody that's listened to our chat today will take the opportunity to sign up and get a copy. And Terry, thanks so much.
Mike, thank you for having me. It's been great to chat with you again.
It was good to see you. Take care now.